Hi, everybody. This is our final unit here. Let me get rid of this. There we go. This is our final section of our final unit. We've done it. We're so close. So let's get into it. We're talking about inequality here. So this is our final market failure. So far we talked about the free rider problem, public goods. We talked about our provision of per unit taxes and subsidies for externalities, positive and negative externalities. We talked about monopolies and natural monopolies, and now inequality. So let's define inequality. When we talk about inequality, normally we're talking about income inequality in the economy, right? And this is a topic of much debate right now. So GDP per capita is not an accurate depiction of what's going on in our society. This is what we've used so far. We say, okay, generally GDP per capita tells us quality of life. Because this only divides the GDP evenly amongst our population. Of course, we know income becomes naturally over time concentrated with a small portion of our society. Generally speaking, a free market society continues to concentrate wealth at the top. And so sometimes the government needs to get involved to fix that. So the government divides in order to understand this inequality. They divide society into 5 groups. We call them quintiles. Quintiles is 1 of 5. One quintile is 1 of 5. That's the idea. 20% of our population is represented by each group because 20% times 5 is 100%. So we have those 5 quintiles. Equality is that every section of society earns 20% of the GDP. That's perfect distribution. That would be just like our GDP per capita, right? So the government determines how far they are from equality and then tries to redistribute fairly to continue society. And of course, fairness is in the views of the population at that time. So let's measure. How do you measure income distribution? All right. So we have group number 1. Let's say this is our poorest 20%. Again, dividing up into quintiles. So out of our enormous income, let's say they only have $5 out of $100. So they get 5% of the income. That's not their full 20%. They're not equal. Then we have group 2, which is kind of a step above them. They make a total of $10, so they get another 10%. So far we have 15%, if we're keeping track over here. We have 15% between these 2 quintiles. Okay, let's keep going. Group number 3, kind of our middle class. They get a total of $15 or 15%. Just this group has the same amount as group 1 and 2 combined. Group number 4 gets a total of $25, kind of our upper middle class, as we call it. So they get 25% of income. These 2 together get about 40% of the total income. So far, 55% of our total income is in our first 4 quintiles. The rest of our society is the richest 20%, the highest quintile, and they get a total of 45%. There you go. Now, actually, in the United States, a little worse than this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You can look at how the wealth is redistributed, especially when you get into your highest 1%. But within the quintiles, this is about what everything falls into. Okay, so how do we look at this on a graph? We call this the Lorenz curve. The Lorenz curve, and it looks like this, actually a box. And we have this line in the middle, and this line represents perfect equality. Here we have percentage of income. How much of the income do they get? And then we have our different quintiles down here at the bottom. So this quintile right here, 80 to 100, that's 20% of our population. That's our highest quintile. And then this quintile down here, 0 to 20%, that's our lowest quintile. Okay, and then everybody in between. So this is our second quintile, third quintile, fourth. And the question is, how much of our income, GDP, does each of these quintiles get? And that tells us how we are doing in inequality. So we always keep something called a reference line here. Perfect equality is this line that goes in between, dividing it. In this line, there we go. In this line, every single quintile gets exactly 20%. So the first quintile gets the first 20% of income. The second quintile, right here, second, gets this. The third quintile gets an additional 20. Seeing this? The fourth quintile gets an additional 20. And then the highest quintile gets the final 20. Right? So every quintile gets 20%. In other words, we have perfect equality. There's no poor, there's no rich. Everybody's the same. Now, what happens in our actual distribution? Our actual distribution looks like this, right? Or something like this. So our first 20% gets a very small portion, maybe like 2 or 3%, right? Our second 20% gets that difference, maybe that's like 8 or 9% there. Our third quintile here, see, our third quintile is getting even a little bit more, but not quite as much. Our fourth quintile, a little bit more. And then our final quintile gets this 45% here. Everything else. In other words, using the distribution I had on the last slide, we can see that our curve looks a little different, right? It's relative to our reference curve, we are pretty unequal. So that is our Lorenz curve. It's our actual distribution of income. The larger this curve, or the further this is to the right, or the bigger, as I say, the banana here, then the worse off our economy is going to be. So there you go. Banana shape, the difference between total perfect equality and where we actually are. The larger this gets, right? As we get more unequal, this keeps rising. So blue is more unequal than yellow. Pink is even more unequal than that. Yeah, let's do what? Orange is even more unequal than that, right? So the further this is to the right, the less distribution or equal distribution we have of income. So that's your Lorenz curve. Middle line, perfect equality. So we call these two areas Area A and Area B. Area A is the area between equality and our actual distribution. Area B is everything else. And we call this the Genie coefficient. I'll put this over here. The Genie coefficient is a statistical measure of income distribution. And it's area A divided by the sum of areas A and B. So if area A is very, very low, that means our line is really close to this line, right? So it's a small thing divided by a big area, right? But when it's very, very high, then we have lots of inequality. So zero, here's the important bit, zero is perfect equality. 1 or 100% is terrible inequality. It's as bad as it gets. So if I have 0.5, then I'm neither equal or unequal. If I have 0.7, highly unequal. If I have 0.2, relatively equal distribution of income. The lower the Gini coefficient, the more equal we are. The higher it is, the more unequal we are. So keep that in mind. All right, let's keep going. So what does the government do? The government comes up with transfer payment redistributions to try and get the banana to be a little bit smaller, to move that curve inwards towards that perfect equality, right? So that's the goal right there, shifting it inwards. So we do that through redistribution of income, moving towards equality. That's the goal, moving towards equality. How do we do that? We do that with transfer payments, right? The very, very poor are given a little bit of assistance through welfare. That gets them a little closer. We raise taxes from other people, we give them welfare. We do this through unemployment benefits, for example. We do this through providing free healthcare. All those things are redistributive effects that push us closer to equality. So the goal is to make the banana as small as possible. All right, we actually use something. Here you go. Here's your Genie Index. The United States is not very equal. Brazil's much worse than that. Sub-Saharan Africa, real bad. China, bad. India, good. Canada, pretty good, right? So this is Genie Index. So it says 25 to 30. That would actually be 0.25 to 0.3. This is 0.3 to 0.35 if we're looking at the Gini coefficient. All right, so how do we actually redistribute? We do some through transfer payments. For mostly, it's through taxation. Taxation is our main way that we redistribute goods. So we have two purposes with taxation. You know this already. First is to raise government revenue. The second is to influence economic behavior, right? So we have three types. This is important. This is your second big takeaway. Know the Gini coefficient, be able to analyze a Lorenz curve, know what the difference is between perfect equality and current distribution, and then know these three types. Progressive is the higher the income, the more tax they pay. That's a progressive tax. If you're really rich, you pay a high percentage of tax. If you're very poor, you pay a low percentage of tax. That is the most redistributive. Very, very wealthy people are going to be taxed a lot, so we can take that money and give it back to the poor through transfer payments. Very, very poor are going to be taxed very little so that they can receive the benefits of this. And this is actually what we have in our society. If you're poor, you actually don't pay anything in taxes. And if you're very wealthy, you pay a little bit more. Proportional is a flat rate tax. This takes the same percentage of income from everybody, right? That's proportional. So this doesn't redistribute, but it definitely makes sure that there's not bad consequences for being poor, right? So it's not, so it's, we call it a flat rate. So if I make $100, I pay 10%, I'm going to pay $10 of that $100. And the very, very wealthy make $1,000,000, they're going to pay 10%, which would be 100,000 of that, right? So it's 10%. Everybody pays the same percentage. Progressive tax, everybody pays a different percentage. The wealthier you are, the higher the percentage is going to be. Then finally, we have a regressive tax. Regressive tax takes a larger percentage from the poor. Our best examples of this are like a sales tax, right? The sale tax, because I have a very low income, I pay the same sales tax as everybody else to buy the same good. But that's a larger percentage of my income than for somebody very, very wealthy. So if I'm paying 10% on $100 of groceries, then that's 10% is $10, right? For both of us, the very wealthy and very poor. But that $10 is a bigger percentage of my total income if I'm poor than if I'm very, very wealthy. So we consider sales tax a regressive tax. Okay, the fix is in order to redistribute and to shrink the Lorenz curve and shrink the banana is to increase tax on the wealthy and increase transfer payments like welfare to the poor. So that's how we fix that market failure. All right, take a look at these. What types of tax do you think each of these is? Pause. Unpause. So a toll road tax, which is $1 per day, what kind of a tax is that? Oops. That's actually going to be a regressive tax. Think of it. When a very wealthy person pays that tax, it's a very small percentage of their income. But when somebody very poor pays it, it's a large percentage of their income. What about state income tax, where richer citizens pay a higher percentage? That's going to be progressive. It's all about the percentage, right? It's progressive. The very wealthy pay a higher percentage than the very poor, it's a percentage of their income. What about 45-cent tax on cigarettes? That's regressive, right? 45 cents is a very small portion of somebody wealthy who's buying those smokes, but it's a larger percentage to somebody who's very poor. Medicare is a 1% tax of every dollar earned. That's going to be a flat rate tax, right? Flat rate tax. So we're paying the same way, or we call it proportional tax. Everybody pays the same percentage of their income. And then finally, 8.25% California sales tax is considered regressive. Again, the poorer you are, the higher tax you're paying. It's a higher percentage of your income to pay for those sales taxes. All right, let's keep going. Here's an example of progressive sales tax that we have in the United States. Actually, a little different. That's a little bit old. Most effective way to fight income inequality. Notice if you make a lot of money, you pay a higher percentage. You make very little money, you pay a low percentage. All right, let's try this question out. Pause. Unpause. Which of the following is most likely to reduce the inequality of any country's distribution of income? Goal is to reduce inequality. We know progressive taxes are the way to go. All right, so job training. If we provide job training for low-skilled workers, why is that going to change that? Well, we would consider that a transfer payment. Low-skilled workers are now getting free on-the-job training, which will make them more productive as a result. Number 60, pause. Unpause. A governmental welfare program that taxes the labor income of wealthy and redistributes the tax revenue to low-income citizens will, the answer is B, it's going to decrease income inequality and decrease efficiency. Why is it decreasing efficiency? Because it's not efficient. It's the government getting involved. Whenever the government's involved, it's inefficient. But what we're doing is we are increasing taxes on the wealthy, and we're increasing transfer payments to the low-income citizens. Number 45, pause. Unpause. In the United States, the federal government redistributes income primarily by taxing different income levels on different rates. Progressive tax. Number 15, pause. Unpause. Which of the following will most likely lead to a more equal distribution of income? Progressive tax. Starting to see a trend here. Number 55, pause. Unpause. In a perfectly competitive free market economy, a wage gap between two workers can be explained by differences in all the following except tastes of luxury goods. That doesn't matter, but remember, this is actually from a couple of sections back. Years of schooling, That can explain it. Occupations, that can explain it. Marginal products, so how much additional production they bring to the table, that absolutely explains it. Marginal revenue product, which is just your marginal product times your price, explains it. But whether or not I like luxury goods doesn't determine whether or not I get paid. All right, that's it. You're done. Microeconomics done. Woo! Party time. See you later. Bye bye.